we go. All right, so Mr. Shabazz, you've gone from Assassin's Creed into The Chosen and done pretty much everything in between. I do want to ask kind of how your career got started.
Yeah, man. So in high school, I went to a private high school, a little bit smaller. You could do a bunch of things at the same time. So um, every 2 years, my high school did a high school musical. Now, I didn't grow up in theater prior to that, but I auditioned and got parts in both musicals, got like a bigger part in the second musical and had a great time with it. And then my senior year, took an acting class at high school, but primarily, man, my focus was sports. I was a three-sport athlete. My first love was baseball, and then basketball became quickly like my main love. And then I played soccer in between to just stay healthy for both seasons. But then when I graduated high school and went up to Washington for college, excuse me, I uh, I, I was born in Chicago, Illinois, and my parents moved us to Turlock, California, which is like Central California, like the center of California, basically a half hour south of Modesto, where George Lucas grew up, where Jeremy Renner grew up, and like hour north of Fresno, right in the center of California, just cows and grass. And that's where I did, junior high, high school. And when I graduated high school, my parents, especially my dad, did not want me to leave high school, and did not want me to leave the town to go to college. Didn't want me to leave and go out of state for college. So I stayed that first year, and went to a JC close by, and I went, played baseball. And through fall ball, I started to get like real bad tendonitis on my arm, and had to sort of stop just before the season started because my arm was a mess. So I said, all right, well, I'm going to need this, give this some time to heal. And in between, sort of applied for colleges behind my dad's back, and then got some good money and got accepted at two different colleges, one in San Diego and one up in Washington. And at the time, I just was really feeling this calling to go see something different, go somewhere different. And so I took the scholarship and went up to a college in Washington. At the time, this was like 93. There was no websites or anything like that. I'd only seen pictures in a brochure, never been to Washington. I just up and left and went to Washington. And so the plan was I had a scholarship for baseball. I was going to play baseball there. My arm felt better, and the same thing happened again. About 2-3 months into fall ball, my tendonitis was flaring up, and as a pitcher, I just could not do it anymore. And I just remember being real depressed and sad about that whole situation, wondering if I'm going to lose my scholarship, what happens next. And I just saw, an advertisement for auditions for a play, Come Back Little Sheba, at the college. I auditioned, got a great role in the show. There's this part for this jock who's the boyfriend of this girl with this family that's struggling, whatever. Got the part and had a great experience doing that. And then the head of the theater department said, look, if you declare as a theater major, I'll take that money you were getting for baseball and give it to you in theater. And so I was like, you know what? I guess my baseball career is done. I keep having trouble with my arms. My arm, I loved doing this project. So let's go. And so I declared as a theater major and a communications major. But at the time, I was not thinking about theater or acting as a career. I come from an immigrant family. I sort of had this immigrant guilt. My parents sacrificed all this to be able to give me a future, to have a fresh start in this country. I gotta do something that's more safe. And so I was thinking, maybe newscasting. And so I went and interned for my senior year at KXLY News 4 up in Spokane, Washington, and it was insane. I, at the same time, have so much respect for people in a newsroom, and at the same time could never, ever do it. I don't understand. 6 p.m. newsroom turns into craziness. And I was like, okay, I know this is not what I'm ever going to do. And so I said, okay, I'm going to do the safe thing, but what would be a fun thing too? I love being in the college atmosphere. So I said, all right, I'll be like a dean of students someday, or a vice president of college. I'll start as a director of student activities and work my way up. And so I came to LA for grad school after I graduated to do just that. And quickly got hired on at one of the Cal States as a director of residence life. And my wife and I, we got married in 2000, and I just started to have this itch. And that's the thing, is like, you love something, it's going to come get you no matter how hard you try and run away from it. And it was clear I had this love for the theater. I had this love for movies and TV. My dad just always loved American movies. Even in the old country, he was always trying to watch John Wayne, Audie Murphy films. And when I was growing up in Chicago, he took me to the re-release of the original Star Wars. Then he took me to Empire Strikes Back. Then he took me to Return of the Jedi, Back to the Future, Indiana Jones, Ghostbusters, any Zorro movie, I was there with my dad. He would not miss a Zorro movie. And so it was inside of me. And so there was near the college I was working at, there was a really great theater, and they had this auditions for A Midsummer Night's Dream, Shakespeare. And I was like, look, Amy, is it okay if I audition? And she was like, sure, yeah, that'd be totally fun. And I did. I got the part of Bottom, which is a great, great role. Any actor would love to play that role. And it just went amazing. But then after that was done, I got this I got a new job at a different university, big promotion type job, and then left it again. But then about, I don't know, 5-6 years later, I was like, that itch came back. And so I went back to my wife and I was like, hey, just for fun, I feel like all I'm doing is working at this university. We're working so hard. It's almost my whole life now. Would you mind if I just went to Hollywood and just for fun took like a cold read class? She's like, definitely. So I went and took this cold read class, had a blast. And then I was like, Amy, would it be okay if I took just a fun scene study class? Sure, go ahead. I did that. That turned into another scene study, turned into advanced scene study, turned into a commercial study. And then all of a sudden I was like, hey, would you mind if I maybe just took headshots, see if the agent would be interested? She's like, sure. And so I did that. Next thing I know, I had an agent. And I don't know, I think 2006-ish, while I was still working at university, I booked my first week's work on a TV show. I booked a co-star role on a show called Over There, which was about the like this platoon of American military that was stationed in Iraq, and off we went from there.
Wow, that is a crazy journey.
Yeah,
I will say your wife sounds amazingly supportive.
She's pretty awesome, man. Yeah, she's pretty awesome.
So not to relate too much, I play junior college baseball. That's what I'm currently doing.
You serious? What position?
I'm a third baseman, DH.
Oh,
what position were you? I'm curious. You said you pitched. Did you play anything else?
Yeah, in high school, I primarily played pitcher and shortstop. Although depending on where the need was, when I wasn't pitching, I'd go there. But it was if I wasn't pitching, I was playing shortstop. And the thing that got me, Grant, is that back then Roger Clemens was a big deal. Sort of mid '80s. I was such a huge baseball fan as a kid. Like I collected Topps cards, had every single like name and team memorized. Right, just a big fan. And I watched this interview with Roger Clemens where he said he would sleep with a baseball tucked between his fingers to spread his fingers out for his split finger fastball. And that's what I started to do. And so that's what happened in high school. I threw a nasty split finger and would very regularly get 13, 14 strikeouts a game, although my team couldn't hit very well. So we didn't have a good win-loss record, but I had enough strikeouts and enough sort of junk to be able to go to the next level. But my coaches just overused me. And by the time I got to my freshman year, my elbow was jacked. And there was no like, hey, just go have some Tommy Johns at the time. So, hey, it led me to theater. What can you do?
That is awesome. Yeah. Well, not the tendonitis, but just all of that. That's just crazy to me.
Yeah. But if you got some friends who want to learn to throw a splitty, just start sleeping with that ball between their fingers. It's going to work.
I will make sure to pass that along. We could use one right now.
No doubt.
So after the acting classes and the agent and then your breakout or your starting role, what was next? So I guess you went from there. That was what, 2003, 2004?
It was 2006 that I actually started. Right. And then from there, I had a couple bookings. I continued to book some work, a couple commercials here and there. As I got started, it was clear the ball was rolling. But by 2007 ended up being like a real big year for me. I booked The Unit, directed by David Mamet. I booked Sleeper Cell, I believe, on Showtime. I booked Californication, the pilot for Californication, where I got to wrestle in a movie theater with David Duchovny and just hurl improv insults at him until he beat me up. It was like back to back to back, really, really great bookings as a new actor, right? And I was starting late in the game, but I was still fresh to Hollywood. And it was that same year that I booked Assassin's Creed. And I don't know if you want to start with Assassin's Creed. This is a good place to start.
Assassin's Creed would be a good place to start.
Sure. So with Assassin's Creed, it wasn't like a typical audition from an agent. I didn't have a voice agent at the time. The only voice I'd done had been connected with maybe some commercial work or something like that came with a voice component. But on a bunch of these sets that I'd been working on, I got real close to one of the consultants on these sets who would consult on like if it was set in the Middle East, he'd make sure like the Arabic's right, the signage is right, that it looks and feels like the Middle East. And he just took a liking to me, sort of became like a Hollywood uncle or something like that in a way. And every now and then he called me with like an audition. And he's like, he calls and he says, "Hey, I'm not sure if you're interested in voice, but I got this audition for a video game. They need a bunch of Middle Eastern themed characters. Would you be interested?" And I was like, "Of course." So went over to, I think it was Hollywood, the studio on Hollywood and Highland, just right there in the corner. That's where the auditions were. And I just walked into a room, Grant, with a sea of dudes who looked like me. Just like every Middle Eastern actor in Hollywood was there. And I'm talking dudes that I recognized, guys that had been working for years. And by this time, I'm starting to get to know them a little bit, but I'm still a rookie in comparison to these guys. And the first audition at that time was they wanted a heavy Middle Eastern accent for Altair. And so I auditioned in a heavy Middle Eastern accent. And then they called me in, they called me back, came in for a second audition. There was less guys now. And they're like, "Hey, great job on the Middle Eastern accent, but we want you to lower it. Can you lower it a little bit?" And I was like, "Sure." So I did that. Then there was a third callback. "Hey, great job last time, but can you lower the accent even just a little bit more?" Great. Then fourth callback. It's the first time I've ever had like 4 callbacks for a voice project. The only time I have. And they said, "Okay, can you lower the Middle Eastern even just a little bit more?" And I was like, "Sure." And ended up getting the call that I got the job for this video game, right? And at the time, like video games were in a very transitional period that I would learn about real quickly. Prior to that, there was RPG games, there was first person shooter games out, but there wasn't like they were still a little bit cartoony, right? So like at the time, one of the big games would have been like the precursor to Assassin's Creed would have been something like Prince of Persia, right? Where you had some pretty awesome gameplay, characters that you really liked, but it wasn't all that serious. The sort of voices were still a little bit trapped there between animation and trying to become serious. It wasn't like sort of a reflection of reality in a way. It was more imaginative. Well,
Like
with
the '60s Batman of
a little bit,
video
yeah,
games.
that's
Yeah.
that's a good metaphor right there. That's a good metaphor. And I remember like I went in for the first day to record Assassin's Creed, and at the time, again, I'm just recording this video game. I play video games typically. If a Star Wars game comes out, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I'll play a Star Wars video game. But then some college students that I knew at the time asked me, they're like, "Hey, like, are you're doing a video game right now?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm doing a video." And they're like, "What is it?" And I said, "Assassin's Creed," and their jaws just dropped. And I was like, What did I miss?" And they're like, "Dude, have you seen the game trailer?" I was like, "No." And so they took me to one of their computers. They put on the game trailer, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is different than anything that has ever come out before." Grant, have you seen that game trailer? Do you remember that game trailer?
So I haven't seen that particular one, and I was a little too young to remember it at the
Sure.
time.
Well, sure.
But
I mean,
I
it's
have played Assassin's Creed. Like
yeah.
it is, especially for the time, like it completely changed games.
It changed the game. It totally changed the game. That trailer, that game trailer, was the first cinematic game trailer. Yeah, you see Altair jump off the eagle's nest, does his leap of faith, um, sneaks through the crowd, and then just does this amazing kill. Um, and it was amazing. Like it blew me away. I was like, holy! And immediately, I got way more intimidated than I was the previous day. I was like, holy cow! And then I went into the next day. I was like, why didn't you guys tell me? Like, why don't you show me the game trailer? At the time, they had some animatics. They showed me the character. They took me through a couple sequences here and there, but there was no. They didn't show me any gameplay, and they certainly didn't show me that game trailer. And then at that point, I realized, wow, this could be. I don't know exactly what we're doing here, what we're making, but this could be special. And turned out to be that it was.
Yeah, that's crazy. So you came in pretty late in development then.
Yeah, so I mean, it's pretty typical that even on TV shows, casting is like the very, very last thing that you do. And so in this video game, I mean, they had like the script is like a 300 plus page script that I'd never seen before. They just sort of plop it down in front of you and you get going. Animatics, gameplay, there's a bunch of stuff. I'm sure they still had work to do, but there's a bunch of stuff done and ready to go.
Wow. I couldn't imagine signing up for a job that like is almost done, but you have no idea what it is. That is awesome. So actually, one of the questions I was going to ask you, like I know it nowadays with games like Cameron Monaghan is Cal Kestis. He's in the suit doing all the mocap. So you didn't do any of the mocap work.
There was no mocap at that time. I think that mocap, I don't know that, I could be wrong, but I don't know that mocap was happening at that time. I think it began a little bit later. So for this one, I just did the voice.
Wow. And how long did that, like, how long were you in the studio doing the voice?
Yeah, 4 sessions to do the whole of Assassin's Creed. 4 sessions. And I remember real clearly that second day when I came in, all nervous, like I was telling you, because I realized what the heck we were doing here. It was a break. I think, a couple hours into it, I went out to get some water, and then Nick Lachey, the singer, dude that used to be married to Jessica Simpson, was in the booth recording in the booth next to me, recording his album. So I got a drink of water next to him, and I said, I'm recording here next to Nick Lachey. I think I'm good. I'm gonna be okay. I immediately lost my nerves and went right back to it.
That's how you know you've made it. Like,
I don't know about that, but it was at least a little bit of encouragement that I needed.
So with the 4 hour sessions, first off, it took you less time to record the game than it took me to beat the game. So
dude, here's the thing about Assassin's Creed. Like, that thing was long. It was a long game, and it's first like if you can go to YouTube and you can watch the gameplay. It is a serious game. There's no joking. There's no messing around. You go from challenge to challenge to challenge. It takes a long time for you to learn the gameplay, figure it out. But once you do, it's really satisfying. Mm-hmm. And then what Assassin's Creed did too was create this incredibly satisfying story arc and leave an opening for new chapters. And of course, after Altair, we got Ezio, and then another 12 games or whatever from there, and a full franchise.
Yeah, a lot of games, like almost too many.
Yeah. But what I do love is that most Assassin's Creed fans will say, and they are all awesome. I haven't played them all. I primarily played 1 and 2, but it's funny how a lot of Assassin's Creed fans are similar to me. Their favorites are typically 1 and 2, and then it goes from there.
Right, because those are the 2 games that were very grounded and serious, and after that it got a little less so. Like, I played a lot of 3 when I got it into it. I mean, it's cool, but it's not that cool. Like, you're in America in like 1775. It's like, send me back to the Middle East.
I think that was something interesting about that first one too. Even the second one, where you are in the Middle East, and like, not only are you playing this character, but you're doing it in a cool setting. You're exploring, you're learning the environment, and you're surprised constantly. And that's another special thing about the game.
It was so new. So I am curious. You did this as a voice role. Like, what came next for you? Did you do more voice? I've got your IMDb pulled up, but I'm gonna be honest, it's not really great with video games. I'm just curious.
Yeah, no. So I'll tell you exactly what happened. And so I'm gonna let you and your listeners know up front, Grant, this story is gonna get sad. It's gonna get better. It's gonna get real sad. Then it's gonna get a lot better. So hang in there with me.
Okay.
In 2007, that big year that I had, another big thing happened to me personally. My wife gave birth to quadruplets. So we had 4 babies at the same time. And when you have 4 babies at the same time, it's under, it's not like, yay, let's do a shower. And so, they were in NICU for 3 months. They were all born under 3 pounds. Each one was like 2 pounds each. They were born early. Like, typically, like, for quadruplets, the average is 28 weeks. My wife made it to 30 weeks. She did a good job. They made it past the threshold for lung development. But like, outside of NICU and getting them home and making sure they're healthy, you are outnumbered big time. And you can't do it with just 2 people. And so the good thing was, because of all these amazing student relationships I'd created over the years, we had big time help. But basically that first year, I did the night shift with 2 or 3 volunteers. My wife did the day shift with 2 or 3 volunteers, and we barely even saw each other. Wow. And this was happening. This was the whole first year. This was happening at the same time as some of the older listeners will remember. That's when the economy crashed, right? So the housing market just crumbled the economy. And on top of that, Hollywood had a writer's strike going on that just shut all of Hollywood down. So it was like, outside of having quadruplets, there's these 2 massive things that happened. And then we also had the kids that year at the same time. And so I remember that time, like, just prior to having the kids, I'd auditioned for, I don't know if you've seen that Adam Sandler movie, You Don't Mess with the Zohan.
I have seen. Yep.
Yeah. And so what happens with most projects, TV, film projects, you get put on, like if you're one of the top folks, you get put on hold or you get pinned. And you get put on hold or pinned. Typically, your agent will call you and let you know you're pinned or put on hold if either you're their guy, but they don't know when they're going to shoot yet, or you were their second choice and they want you on hold just in case their first choice doesn't work out. And typically these holds, they last for maybe a week to 2 weeks or something like that. I was on hold for You Don't Mess with the Zohan for like 2.5 months. Like it was the longest hold I've ever experienced. And when you're at home, you're struggling with these infants and barely sleeping and barely seeing your wife. And then you finally get that call, you've been released from your hold. It just crushes you. But that was like the one thing. I mean, auditions basically just stopped for this long period of time. And it wasn't until after the kids, we were able to work with we were able to take care of the kids on our own. About the time they hit about a year old, we didn't need all the volunteers, that things started to get a little better. I started to work a little more, but at the same time, I had not pursued voice previously, and I was not like planning on pursuing voice at the time. Out of Assassin's Creed, I ended up getting another call, sort of randomly, based on my work on Assassin's Creed, to do this audiobook. So I did this best-selling audiobook, New York Times best-selling audiobook, and that was a great experience as well. But it wasn't something I even thought to pursue because I loved being in front of the camera so much. And so I continued to work for the next 2 years after the kids, like after that first year with the kids. But then we got some bad news again, personally, in our personal lives. One of my boys at 2.5 years old was diagnosed with leukemia. And so, right, so now we have quadruplets and a kid with cancer. And so that's a 3.5 year treatment process for that kid. And here's the thing, when, acting is a job just like anything else, but what it does, it requires you to be a certain person at a certain time while the camera's watching you. It's really hard to be that guy you need to be on set when you're in hospitals every day, when your kids are suffering, when your kids are struggling. It was just hard. Now, during that time, there's a couple projects you'll see me in. I think Grey's Anatomy. There's another couple projects where you'll see my head is bald because I shaved my head with my kid, right? So even during that time, I continued to work. But then you will notice when you look at my IMDb, I think there's a big, big like chunk of missing time from like 2014 or 13 all the way up to like 2020 or 2021. And the reason there is because after my thank God my kid was in remission after 3.5 years and things were going good for about 6 months. Then all of a sudden one day he has this little tiny like absent seizure. And then it started snowballing and he had more seizures and more seizures. And real soon, within like 6 months, he had full generalized epilepsy. And he was having up to 120 seizures a day. And so now, like, my wife my wife and I, we talk about this quite a bit, just help people through the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. Like, honestly, the seizures that he was dealing with at the time was even harder than dealing with the cancer, because at least with the cancer, there's a process with steps to get him healthy. Seizures, they don't know what's going on. The neurology stuff is really hard. And so during that 7-year time period, I couldn't do anything. I just couldn't. Like a lot of folks in Hollywood, I got my real estate license. I do real estate stuff on the side. And so that's what I was doing, because I can come in and out of real estate. And then what I did do to stay involved is I did get a voice agent, but it was almost all commercial voice work. I'd have a video game audition every now and then, but it was mostly commercial voice work. And I don't know, with the video game thing, I think that it is something like, especially now where I have more time to breathe, we're in a peaceful time in our family's life. Pursuing more video games now is probably something that I would like to do, but it just wasn't on the radar at the time. What I needed to do was survive with my family and get my family healthy. Now, he didn't deal with seizures that entire 7 years, but what ended up happening 3 years into the seizure time period, we got him to about a couple seizures a day. We're starting to figure it out. And then boom, his cancer relapsed. And then we went back to the hospital, back to 30-day induction. And he had CAR T cell therapy. and that CAR T cell therapy worked for about 4 months, and then he relapsed again. And it was about, I'd say altogether, we've probably spent over a year at the hospital with that kid up through 2019 when he needed a bone marrow transplant. So he had his bone marrow transplant in 2019. And after that, after he came out of the hospital, it was a gradual time of healing for him and healing for my family. And then it was during that healing time, 2019, pre-pandemic, where I'd only basically done voiceover work, commercial voiceover work for that 7 year period, where I watched The Chosen for the first time. A bunch of folks are bugging me like, "Hey man, you got to watch this show." I finally watched the show. I watched the first episode, and Grant, like a guy that looks like me, there's not a lot of spots in Hollywood, but one of those spots is one of the things I've had to battle with is a lot of just post 9/11 stereotype casting. And when you're in Hollywood and there's only a certain amount of things that you can do, or in terms of the way they'll see you, you got to take what you get, right? I'm still in that position where I'm hungry. I'm going to fight for whatever I can get, just like any other actor should. And so watching The Chosen was a little bit of a revelation for me because I'd seen Black Panther the previous couple years, and I was like, wow, what an amazing story that celebrates African culture, and look at all these African Americans here in this country who are just gushing over this film. They can see themselves as heroes now. You know what I mean? And same thing, I saw Coco, Pixar's Coco, and I was like drying tears, going, "This is amazing! Look how it celebrates Mexican culture is amazing." And then I saw The Chosen. I was like, holy cow, this is an entire cast of dudes who look like me, and a bunch of them are good guys, right? And that's amazing. So I went directly to the computer, emailed my agent immediately, and was like, how is it possible that I did not get an audition for this role? Now, for this show. Now, to be fair to my agent at the time, I'd been booked out over that 7 year period most of the time. I'd been booked back in, and what that means, if for in terms of Hollywood language for folks listening, when you book out, you're telling your agent that you're not available to audition. When you book in, that means, hey, I'm available to audition. So I'd been booked out for most of that time because of my son, and so I'd been booked out a lot, but I'd been booked back in for about 6 months, and finally, during that 6 months, I'd only gotten like 2 auditions. I had like one for like a Mexican cereal commercial, and I was like, I don't speak Spanish, right? And I went to it anyway. And then for one for like an Arabic industrial, and I'm like, I don't speak Arabic. I mean, I can make it work for parts, but I don't speak Arabic. And they're like, can you just try it? I'm like, no, I don't. This requires fluent Arabic, and I can't do it. So I said, all right, I'm gonna be fair with them. I'm gonna give them till January and see if things change. If things don't change, I need to make a change in my career. And things didn't really change. So I said, okay, this time I'm not going on referral. I'm not calling an old acting instructor. I'm going to find an agent by myself using IMDb Pro that I know will know how to submit me. And that's what I did. And I signed with a new agent on March 12th, 2020, or March 11th, and then March 12th was the shutdown. Everybody was locked in on March 12th. And so I'd done my part. I felt like, okay, like I did my work to get this far. But in acting, you've just got to be doing something. If you're not on set working, it doesn't matter. Anybody who's interested in being an actor someday or being a writer, like, you can do it at home. You can do a variety of different things that are pushing you forward, that feel like your soul is pushing forward, that are the kinds of things that are filling you up and making you feel like you have progress. If you're getting paid, that's not the win. The win is making something, creating something that you feel good about, that you feel proud of. And so I felt like I was pushing forward, even though that shutdown happened. But I remember my first audition coming out of the pandemic was on July 15th, 2021. And I remember it because that's my wife and I's anniversary. We're walking on the beach in San Diego. Grant, I'm clean shaven, tan, looking my best, anniversary, weekend. And I get a call from my agent saying, hey, you got an audition for The Chosen. First call right out of the pandemic. And I read the role, and it was amazing. I was like, holy crap, I want this. And I was like, oh no, like, I am clean shaven. I do not look right for the part right now. And beyond that, I tanked my audition. I knew I tanked the audition, and that was that. So I was like, that's okay. I did what I could during that time. But here's what happened. Shortly after that, like I tanked the Chosen audition, but immediately I booked a recurring role on SEAL Team. And then right after that, boom, booked a guest star role on NCIS. Right after that, boom, booked what was it? Booked what's the show on Amazon? I'm forgetting
Bosh.
it. Bosch Legacy.
Yep.
Yeah, booked Bosch Legacy right away, and then had the studio audition me for some voice to work on Netflix projects. They hired me for the first one, and then just kept calling me once a month, once every 2 months, to work on all these Netflix projects. So while I'm working on all these TV shows, I'm working on all these Netflix projects, and then I book Welcome to Chippendales, which is this really meaningful part for me because it's as Peter Bogdanovich, who's a Hollywood icon, and it wasn't a Middle Eastern themed role. It was really like you can take all my stuff on this side and measure it against that role and be like, holy cow, that's the same person, which I just was really proud of, right? And then I got another audition for The Chosen, and 2 callbacks later, I booked a part on The Chosen. So the wonderful thing, and it told you it was going to get better. The most important thing is my son is doing great. My family is healthy. They're awesome kids. So I've got like 4 16-year-olds now, and everybody's doing so great. They're such good kids. They're fun kids. I got one that's really interested in film and TV. And like yesterday, I showed him one of the fight scenes from the Raid 2, and he just lit up. And so we went on a deep dive on YouTube, researching behind the scenes on the Raid 2, and then found the Raid. He's like, Dad, we got to watch the Raid. And I'm like, slow down. We'll get there. It's amazing. This led to John Wick. He's like, what? This came before John Wick. So he's passionate about it as well. And so I tell this to everybody, like, when you've gone through hardship and when you've gone through suffering, every day is a freaking gift. Every day is a gift. And so I'll tell folks, like, every day my son is not in the hospital is the best day we've ever had. And I sincerely mean that. And it has been just like that much more of a gift to genuinely be able to say that since the pandemic, I've not stopped working. I've just been constantly working and working on some really cool projects, stuff that's been challenging, stuff that's been totally fun, and stuff that's been meaningful as well.
That is just an incredible journey. I want to ask, and we're going to edit this afterwards, so feel free to tell me to cut this out. I'm
No
curious,
worries.
are you a man of faith? Because that whole journey just sounds very, it just sounds almost like Job in a way.
Yeah, there's a little bit of Job in there. Yeah, I am. My father, my parents are from the Middle East. My father grew up in both Iraq and Iran, and my mother grew up in Lebanon. But they're not Muslim. My dad is actually Assyrian, Assyrian. So if you read your Torah, you read the Old Testament, the Assyrians are in the Old Testament throughout the whole thing. And he grew up as an Orthodox Christian, but then he really, he met a missionary, did some translating for a missionary, and just all of a sudden realized, like, I'm going to be a preacher. That's what I'm going to do with my life. And he went to the Arab Baptist Theological Seminary in Lebanon. He met my mom, who's a secretary at the radio station there. And basically his job was to translate C.S. Lewis and then read C.S. Lewis on Arabic radio. And so they moved to Chicago, Illinois in 1970 to work with the Assyrian people. So in Chicago, as the Chicago has the largest population of Assyrians in the whole country per capita. And so he went to be a minister, sort of missionary to the Assyrian people there. So certainly my faith tradition is really, really important to me. And it's something that me and my family lean on very much. And it's really, for me, an added bonus with The Chosen. For those who don't know The Chosen, are like, is that Jesus project? I called it earlier as a prestige television show because it really is. This show, what makes it different than so much Christian media from before is that it breaks the rules. And I studied theater and why Christian theater or faith-based theater can be bad oftentimes in college. And part of it is that we've got these rules, like we can't cross these lines, or we can only hire people of the same faith, et cetera, et cetera. That's not what this production does. Everybody who's hired on this production is one of the best people in their field. As an actor, I auditioned for this job just like any one of my jobs. Went through my agent. It is a SAG production, and you've got folks there from all over the world who've been hired because they're the best for that role. And it just straight up elevates it. It straight up elevates it. And so it really is neat to be able to work on a project that not only is quality television, but that also speaks to something that's really meaningful to me at the same time. Only problem is I play a really bad guy. But I play a really bad guy on the show. But I'm happy to, I'm happy to do it. It's been a ton of fun, and I'm super thankful.
That's incredible. Just incredible. I'm gonna be honest. I haven't seen. We talked a little bit off air. I haven't seen
Yeah.
enough of The Chosen. I'm curious though. It is all crowdfunded, correct?
It was, yeah. So
Was.
it began like they filmed their first 4 episodes um, on crowdfunding, and then used those 4 episodes as a platform to continue to crowdfund. And they continued to crowdfund, and it just blew up by season 2. And then into season 3, they all of a sudden, and I'm not going to get all the language on this correctly, but there's a production company that has now come alongside them. Excuse me. There's also a nonprofit that's come alongside them that is matching donations. So they're getting funding from a variety of different resources now. And what's interesting about The Chosen is that it's sort of breaking ground for Hollywood financing in a way. I don't know if you're ever an Entourage fan, Grant, but like I loved Entourage on HBO. Doug Ellen is the showrunner producer, and just I think last summer, him and Kevin Dillon, Kevin Conley, and Charlie Sheen, they filmed this pilot, and they financed it through a private financer. They did it totally independently, and they're trying to now sell a completed pilot with Charlie Sheen, who's not done TV shows since all his stuff, and they have not sold it yet. It looks like it might happen, but they were even talking about The Chosen on that show. Joe Rogan was talking about the Chosen on his show because they did it. They found a way to raise the money to do a project with no studio contact at all, to be able to make the decisions they want to make for their project and make something that their fans want. And so I think what we're going to see in the near future here is that The Chosen is the first of many different crowd-funded Hollywood projects that are not necessarily faith-based that are happening all over Hollywood, because it's clear they're doing something special. I mean, what's interesting is that like in the 3rd season, they even released episodes 1 and 2 and 7 and 8, the final episodes, in the theaters. And it was really weird to be like, Avatar is number 1 and The Chosen is number 2. Like, Avatar would be like 80 million for the weekend, and then Chosen was like down at like 12, but it was still amazing where it did good money in the theaters. So it's pretty clear. It was pretty clear that Hollywood could have some new financing strategies that folks, producers, use to get their shows on the air.
That is incredible. The reason I was asking is I was just going to ask if there was anything in terms of actually being on set that it affected, but it sounds like at this point it's just like a normal Hollywood production.
Yeah, and I was telling folks like there's a lot of outdoor shooting, and I've done a lot of outdoor shoots, and I was telling folks on set like this is like NCIS, for example, is a show that's been on the air for 19 or 20 seasons. I think it's the most successful show ever, probably something like that. And when I got there, I was really curious to see, well, what's this going to feel like? Is it going to feel any different? And it was NCIS level, everything. It was high level. I'd never been on an outdoor shoot where they were taking care of the background extras in the same way they were taking care of the regulars and the guest stars. Across the board, it was like I remember shooting my first day of shooting last year, like 100 degrees, crazy humidity. People are passing out, and they are taking care. They're making sure after every take, people have water, electrolytes, orange slices, fruit cups, just across the board. The way they're taking care of people was so impressive to me that it made me really hope that I could stick around with the production. And I was real thankful to get a call for season 4.
Yeah, that is awesome, and it speaks volumes that it is faith-based, and they are taking care of people and loving on people.
And that's a clear thing. The spirit of the show is also present on the set, which I think is a great thing.
Yeah, that is really, really awesome. So you're currently filming The Chosen.
Yeah,
I believe we've caught you in like a week break or something.
Yeah.
Do you have plans after The Chosen, or is there other stuff you're working on or stuff you're excited for?
Yeah. So I'm currently working on The Chosen. It's been about a month project. I'm coming back to more voiceover projects for Netflix. And what I've been doing with this company called Horseless Cowboy is Netflix buys a lot of entertainment from all over the world. And Netflix is about getting content on their platform, just like most streamers now. What Netflix does is they'll buy, like, a project from Egypt or from Japan or from Poland or whatever, and they want to get content created for their American audience as well. So they've got to take and dub over English language voices throughout a ton of their content. So you might have been watching some Middle Eastern horror TV show and heard my voice in that. You might have watched like the Polish rom com. My voice is going to be in that. The Danish thriller, my voice is going to be in that. The Swedish cyber thriller, my voice is going to be in that. The Turkish rom com, like crazy weird comedy, my voice is in that. So my voice can be found in all in a bunch of these projects from Netflix. And then I've also over the years been doing a lot of work with Third Floor Visualization. So if you haven't heard of the Third Floor is a pre-visualization company that basically does 75 to 80% of most blockbuster films. So when you see, like, for example, that the all these fight sequences that take place in a movie like Avengers Endgame or something like that, all that is so complicated, it has to be completely pre-visualized before it ever happens. And um, so this company does works with Marvel and other studios, Lucasfilm, to pre-visualize everything, and they need voice actors. So I've been going into Third Floor Productions pretty consistently and helping them with all their previs, which is really neat because there's this project that Chris Pratt's attached to called Viking Ninja Warrior. It hasn't gotten into production, but and it may or may not. But Chris Pratt is still attached, I believe. But I did a bunch of previs sequences as Chris Pratt for Viking Ninja Cowboy is what the name of the film is. In addition to that, like I got to work, I think just a year, I got to work with Dan Trachtenberg on Dan Trachtenberg is a big upcoming director now. He directed Prey on Hulu right now and a bunch of other really big projects. The Boys on Amazon, and got to work with voice on him for an entire day, just pre-visualizing a bunch of sequences for an upcoming movie. So been doing that voiceover work for Netflix, and then hey, I have a couple auditions in the can for a couple movies, one for Sony. And that's the thing with an actor, like, you got to keep hustling, keep pushing, keep hustling, and I have no doubt the next in front of the camera project is just right around the corner. In addition to that, like I said, actors out there can't sit still. You got to be doing something. And part of what I did during the pandemic, I wasn't waiting for an agent's call. I was writing my own stuff. And so I wrote a pilot, wrote a full storyboard, excuse me, not storyboard, but story Bible for the pilot as well. And so really my next step, the next sort of goal that I have, like the goal that I had coming out of last year into this year, was to, number one, find a personal representation, personal appearance agent, because I finally, for the first time in my career, have been in a place where I can actually leave the house and go hang with fans. And that's something I've never been able to do in all these years, that Assassin's Creed fans have mailed stuff to me and have contacted me online. And even I've never been able to have a real Instagram presence. Finally, this year is when I finally booted that up and have been able to connect with fans and started going out and meeting with fans, signing autographs, that kind of thing. And it's just a joy. Assassin's Creed fans are the best. But that was the goal, and that goal's been accomplished, and we're underway. The next goal is to find management to represent me on the pilot. That's what I'm really excited about, because I think it's really fun. Have something fun here, have something fresh here, and so yeah, always doing something. That's what we all got to do.
Yeah, I hope to see the pilot make it to fruition. Um, I imagine Assassin's Creed has a few fans that are interested in getting things signed.
Yeah, they're the best. They're passionate fans, and I just, I am thankful that I get to be the OG assassin. I get to that I was Altair, the one that started it all.
Yeah, and arguably the best game of the 20-something year franchise.
Yeah,
it's still running. Yeah. That is really awesome. You have a really amazing story. Like, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing it here. I'm going to be honest with you. I had questions, and then you answered all of the questions, and so I'm out of questions. I really
I'm
appreciate
sorry. I can get wordy sometimes, man. I apologize for that. Next
it.
time I'll try and put
Oh,
breaks.
oh no, that is perfect. Like I'd much rather. Nobody wants to listen to me talk. That's
No,
like they didn't come here to listen to me.
I do a
So
great job hosting, Grant. Thank you.
thank you. I do. So you've got the chosen coming up. Is there any place people can find you? Anything you want to plug? Um, just for people who want to go find you.
Yeah, come on over to the Instagram. You know, especially if you're an Assassin's Creed fan, like that's mainly where, like, socially online, that's mainly where I'll hang out. Is PG Shabaz at PG Shabaz on Instagram, and I do, and there's no hyperbole here. I do respond to every single DM I get from an Assassin's Creed fan. Any Assassin's Creed fan that contacts me, I always want to respond. Always let them know I appreciate them, and so I've loved connecting with fans through Instagram. And Instagram is just a fun place, and that's a place to find me.
That is awesome. Yeah, go follow him there. I know I follow you. Been following you for a while. And thank you so much for coming on. I'm glad we got a chance to talk.
Hey, you got it, man. Never compromise the brotherhood.
Never compromise the brotherhood.